welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now, I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book Between Saints, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. When I was the parish priest at São Francisco de Paula, something truly strange happened to me. Father Veloso used to say this part with a low voice, as if he were telling a secret. I lived right next to the church back then, and one night I came home late. I always checked the church doors before going to bed, just to be sure they were locked tight. That night was no different. I found them closed, but I noticed a faint glow coming from underneath. That light startled me. I ran to find someone from the night patrol, but there was no one around. So I went back and stood in the courtyard, not knowing what else to do. The light wasn't too bright, but it was far too strong for thieves. And it didn't move like candlelight or lanterns would when carried by people sneaking around. It stayed steady. Curiosity got the better of me. I went home to grab the keys to the sacristy. The sacristan had gone to spend the night in Niterói, and after making the sign of the cross, I opened the door and stepped inside. The hallway was pitch black. I brought a lantern with me and walked carefully, trying to muffle the sound of my shoes on the floor. The first two doors leading into the church were shut, but I could see the same light glowing beneath them, maybe even brighter than before. As I moved forward, I found the third door already open. I placed the lantern on the floor behind a cloth I pulled from my pocket, so no one inside could see it, and crept closer to take a look. I stopped short. That's when I realized I hadn't brought anything to protect myself. I was completely unarmed, about to walk into a mystery with nothing but my bare hands. A few more minutes passed. Inside, the light remained calm and steady, a soft milky color unlike any candle flame I'd ever seen. Then I heard voices. They weren't whispers or confused noises. They were clear, calm, and regular like a normal conversation. At first, I couldn't make out what they were saying. But then a thought struck me so hard that I took a step back. In those days, bodies were still buried inside churches. What if the voices belonged to the dead? I stepped back in terror, and only after some time could I gather my senses and approach the door again. I told myself that such an idea was pure nonsense. But reality had something far more astonishing in store than a mere conversation between the dead. I prayed to God for strength, crossed myself once more, and began to walk forward cautiously, hugging the wall closely as I entered. What I saw was beyond belief. Two of the three saints on the opposite side, St. Joseph and St. Michael, on the right side for anyone entering the church through the main door, had come down from their niches and were now seated on their altars. They no longer had the size of statues, but of living men. And they were speaking toward this side of the church, where the altars of St. John the Baptist and St. Francis de Sales stand. I cannot describe what I felt. For a while I don't know how long he stood frozen, unable to move forward or back, completely horrified and trembling. I must have been close to the edge of madness, and the only reason I didn't fall into it was by divine mercy. I can say with certainty that I lost all sense of myself and of any other reality besides that strange, unique moment. Only because of this trance-like state did I dare, after some time, to walk further into the church so I could look toward the opposite side. There too I saw the same sight. St. Francis de Sales and St. John, also out of their niches, seated at their altars, talking with the others. I was so stunned that I barely noticed their voices at first. It seemed they had kept speaking the entire time, but I hadn't even registered the sound. Slowly, I became aware of their voices and could finally understand that they hadn't stopped their conversation. I began to hear the words clearly, though I couldn't yet grasp their meaning. Then, one of the saints spoke directly toward the high altar, making me turn my head. That's when I saw it St. Francis of Paula, the patron saint of the church, had also left his niche and was now speaking to the others, just as they spoke among themselves. The voices didn't rise above a normal tone, and yet they carried clearly, as if the sound waves had somehow gained extra strength. But if that was strange, the light was even stranger. It didn't come from anywhere visible, since all the chandeliers and candlesticks were turned off. It felt like moonlight, pouring in without the moon itself being seen. That comparison holds up even more when you consider that, just like real moonlight, some corners stayed in shadow. It was into one of those quiet, darker spots that I quietly slipped. By that point, I was moving on instinct. The life I lived during that time felt nothing like any other time before or after. Just think, in front of such a bizarre scene, I felt absolutely no fear. I lost the ability to think clearly, yet I could still hear and watch with sharp focus. After a few moments, I realized what they were doing. They were going over and talking about the prayers and requests from that day. Each one had noticed something different. All of them terrible, brilliant psychologists had looked deep into the hearts and lives of the believers. They dissected feelings and thoughts like surgeons peeling apart a body. St. John the Baptist and St. Francis of Paula, both strict and harsh in their ways, often looked annoyed and rigid. But St. Francis de Sales was different. He listened and spoke with the same gentle kindness that filled his famous book, Introduction to the Devout Life. Each saint reacted according to his own nature as they described and judged the prayers they had received. They had already mentioned examples of true, pure faith, as well as cases of coldness, pretense, and inconsistency. The two stricter saints grew more and more disgusted, but St. Francis de Sales reminded them of a line from Scripture: "Many are called, but few are chosen." His meaning was clear: not everyone who came to church had a clean heart. St. John shook his head slowly. St. Francis de Sales then said to him, with calm patience, "I tell you, St. John, I am beginning to feel something strange for a holy man. I'm starting to lose faith in humanity." The air hung still in the celestial chamber, as if heaven itself leaned in to listen. St. Joseph had just spoken, his tone sharp with conviction, but St. Francis de Sales raised a calm hand, silencing the murmurs of the Holy Assembly. "You exaggerate too much, John the Baptist," the bishop saint interjected gently. "Let's not overdo it. Listen, just today, something happened here that made me smile. It might even have angered you, but that's the thing. People aren't worse than they were centuries ago. Let's subtract the bad in them, and what's left is still plenty good. Believe me, and you'll end up smiling when you hear my story." "Me?" John replied, surprised. "Yes, you, John the Baptist," the saint continued, his voice warm and inviting. "And you too, Francis of Paula, and all of you here. You'll all smile with me. And for my part, I can smile already, because I've already asked the Lord and received exactly what this person came to request." "What person?" St. Joseph asked. "A person far more intriguing than your scribe, Jose, or your shopkeeper, Miguel," St. Francis said with a knowing smile. "Could be," St. Joseph cut in, "but I doubt she's more interesting than the adulteress who came here today, throwing herself at my feet. She came begging me to cleanse her heart from the leprosy of lust. She'd just fought with her lover the day before," he went on, "and he insulted her cruelly. She cried all night. By morning, she decided to leave him for good and came here to find the strength she needed to escape the devil's grip. She started praying well, sincerely," he said. "But little by little I saw her thoughts begin to drift. Her mind wandered back to the first sweet moments with him. Her words, meanwhile, grew lifeless. Her prayer turned lukewarm, then cold, then absent. Her lips used to pray and kept moving, but her soul, well, I was watching from above, was no longer with me. It was with him. Finally, she made the sign of the cross, stood up, and left without asking for anything. My case," St. Francis said, "is better than that." "Better than that?" St. Joseph asked, curious now. "Much better," St. Francis replied. "And not as sad as the story of that poor soul wounded by earthly sin, which the grace of the Lord may still save." "Why wouldn't he save the other one too? Let me tell you what happened." The room fell silent. All leaned in, attentive, waiting for the tale to unfold. I stood there, trembling with fear. It hit me suddenly, these saints could see everything inside a person, as if we were made of glass. Hidden thoughts, twisted intentions, secret hatreds. They might have already seen some sin in me, or even just the seed of one. I didn't have time to think much longer, though, because St. Francis de Sales began to speak. "He's 50 years old," he said. "His wife is in bed, sick with erysipelas on her left leg. For 5 days now he's been deeply worried because her condition is getting worse and medicine can't promise a cure. And yet, look how far public prejudice can go. No one believes his pain is real. No one thinks he loves anything but money. As soon as word spread about his worry, the whole neighborhood burst into jokes and cruel comments. Some even believed he was already mourning the cost of her funeral." "Well, it could be true," St. John replied thoughtfully. "But it wasn't," Sales continued. "I won't deny his greedy and stingy I is. Greedy as life itself and stingy as death. No one has ever pulled gold, silver, paper money, or even copper coins from someone else's pocket more mercilessly than he does. And no one has ever guarded that money with more care and speed. Once a coin lands in his hand, it hardly ever leaves again. All the extra money he owns lives, locked away in an iron cabinet, secured with 7 different keys. He sometimes opens it late at night, stares at the money for a few minutes, and quickly locks it again. But those nights, he barely sleeps, if at all. He has no children. His life is wretched. He eats only to stay alive, and even then, poorly and sparingly. His family includes only his wife and a black enslaved woman. He bought her many years ago along with another one secretly, because they were smuggled. Some say he never even paid for them, since the seller died soon after without leaving any written record. The other woman passed away not long ago. And here you'll see just how obsessed with saving this man really is. Francis Sales freed the dead body. That's right. He set her free after she died. The holy bishop paused for a moment, smiling slightly, clearly enjoying the shock on everyone's faces. Do you mean the corpse? Yes, the corpse. He buried the enslaved woman as if she were a poor, free person, just so he wouldn't have to pay for her funeral. It wasn't much, but it was something. And for him, nothing is too small. Streets flood drop by drop. He has no desire to show off, no taste for noble titles. Those things cost money, and he says money doesn't fall from the sky. He keeps little company, takes no family outings. He listens to and tells stories about other people's lives. That's a pleasure that costs nothing. It's easy to understand why people don't believe in him, Saint Miguel said. I won't argue with that, replied the other saint. After all, the world only sees what's on the surface. What they don't realize is that this housekeeper of his, who he raised and trusted for over 20 years, truly loves her husband. Don't be surprised, Miguel. A flower pale and scentless, yes, but still a flower grew on that rough stone wall. The heart plays strange games like that. Sales loves his wife deeply. Has been crushed and lost ever since he began fearing her death. This morning very early, after barely 2 hours of sleep, he started thinking about the disaster ahead. With no hope left on earth, he turned to God. He thought of us, especially me, since I'm the saint whose name he bears. Only a miracle could save her, so he decided to come here. He lives nearby and ran all the way. When he arrived, his eyes shone with hope, but not exactly the light of faith. There was something else behind it, something quite specific, which I'll now explain. At this point, I must ask you all to pay even closer attention. The angels leaned forward eagerly. Even I couldn't help stepping closer, caught up in the moment. The saint's story was long and detailed, his analysis complex, but I'll give you the main points clearly and simply. When Sales decided to come to me, asking me to intercede for his wife's life, the saint continued, he had a very particular one only a man used to lending money would think of. He made a promise. If I saved her life, he would offer me a wax leg. Sales had no faith when he made that vow. It wasn't devotion that moved him. No, it was the greedy man who thought he could push divine grace by promising profit in return. And it wasn't just greed speaking, it was also stinginess. By making the promise, he showed he truly wanted his wife to live, but only because he saw her survival as a kind of investment. To give money, he believed, was proof of sincerity. The heart only values what costs something, his dark conscience whispered. You see, thoughts like these don't come out loud like others. They rise from deep inside a person's soul and stay hidden in the shadows of their mind. But I saw everything the moment he came rushing in here, eyes glowing with hope. I watched him cross himself again and again, and I waited until he finished praying. At least he still has some religion, St. Joseph said. Some, yes, I replied, but unclear and cheap. He never joined any brotherhoods or third orders because he thinks giving there means losing money that should go straight to God. That's how he keeps faith and savings in balance. Still, we can't expect too much from anyone. It's true he fears heaven and believes in the teachings. He knelt down and prayed. And while he prayed, I could see his poor soul suffering deeply, even though hope was slowly turning into quiet certainty. God would have to save her, he thought. Of course he would, because of the vow I helped him make. I would speak for him. That's what he believed, his lips quietly moving through the words of prayer. When he finally stopped praying, Sale stayed on his knees for a while, hands folded. Then he opened his mouth to speak, not to thank, but to confess his pain. He swore that only the Lord could stop this tragedy. His wife was going to die. She was going to die. She was going to die. He kept repeating it, stuck on the word, unable to move forward. He tried to say the promise aloud, to ask for help, but couldn't find the right words, not even close ones, not even vague ones. Nothing came. He hadn't practiced generosity in so long that he didn't know how to begin. He looked at me with pleading eyes, his voice trembling as he begged me to save her. She was dying, he said, and he wanted me to pray for her, to ask the Lord to spare her life. But there was something else he wanted to say, something he could not bring himself to speak aloud. The promise, the one about the wax just wouldn't come. Every time he tried to form the first word, a sharp pain gripped his insides. It wasn't pain, really. It was greed, clawing at his guts, holding his tongue. Save her, he thought. Intercede for her. But as the words formed, he saw it, the wax leg, clear as day, floating in the air before him. And beside it, the coin it would cost him. The leg vanished, but the coin stayed. Round. Shiny. Yellow. Pure gold. Real gold. Better than the gold on the candlesticks from my altar, which were only partly gilded. That coin, he knew it well. It had been with him for years, day and night, his faithful companion. And now it spun in the air, going round and round. Wherever he looked, there it was. It rolled across the ceiling, rose from the floor, danced on the altar from one end to the other. It clinked among the chandeliers above. His eyes followed it, even from a distance, and he could feel the cold, smooth weight of it in his mind. He could almost touch the raised design stamped into its face. Now, his eyes begged me harder than ever. They were full of sorrow, full of shame, full of helplessness. He looked at me like a man who had lost everything. His lips trembled, and broken words slipped out. God, the angels, the holy wounds. They came softly, tearfully, like prayers meant to show how deep his faith was, how great his pain. But still, he couldn't promise the leg. At times, he tried to force it, like a man gathering strength to leap over a ditch. He pictured his wife's death, imagined the grief it would bring, and let himself feel it fully. But just as he was about to jump, he stopped. The coin rose again in his mind, and the promise stayed locked inside him. Minutes passed. The vision grew stronger. The coin began to move faster, bouncing and multiplying until it seemed like there were hundreds of them, all spinning, all his, all just out of reach. And the battle inside him grew darker, heavier, more cruel. It wasn't just a coin anymore. It was his soul, turning, turning, turning. He was a simple man, and the sudden fear that his wife might be dying froze the blood in his veins. He wanted to rush to her, but he couldn't move. She might already be slipping away. He begged me to help her, to save her. And in that moment of desperation, the devil of greed whispered to him, offering a new kind of deal, a strange exchange. It told him that prayer was worth more than anything in this world, that it was finer, nobler, more powerful. So there he stood, bent over, full of sorrow, hands joined, eyes lowered, helpless and resigned. He begged me to save his wife. He begged me, and promised me 300 no less than that 300 Our Fathers, and 300 Hail Marys. He repeated it with force. 300, 300, 300. Then the number climbed higher. It went to 500, then 1,000 Our Fathers, and 1,000 Hail Marys. He didn't picture those numbers written in letters, but in digits, as if that made the promise more real, more precise, and the obligation stronger. 1,000 Our Fathers, 1,000 Hail Marys. His voice broke again with tears and trembling, speaking of holy wounds and angels of the Lord. 1,001, those 4 digits, grew and grew, until they filled the church from floor to ceiling. And as they grew, so did the man's effort and his hope. His words came faster, more forcefully. 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. Go ahead, laugh all you want, St. Francis de Sales finally said. And the other saints truly did laugh, not with the wild, mocking laughter of Homer's gods when they saw the lame Vulcan serving at the table, but with a quiet, peaceful, holy, and truly Catholic laugh. After that, I couldn't hear anything else. I fell straight to the floor. When I opened my eyes, it was already morning. I ran to open every door and window in the church and the sacristy, letting in the sunlight, the enemy of bad dreams.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.